Welcome. This course is to provide educators with foundational knowledge about the pathways to U.S. citizenship. This knowledge will support your learning as both a professional educator and as a human being who can serve as an advocate and ally for your students and families. The information covered in this course will also help you become an informed practitioner and resource for your entire school community. We have divided the course learning into 5 modules. First, we will provide an overview of key terminology related to U.S. citizenship and immigration statuses. Second, we will discuss a rationale for why educators need to be informed about U.S. citizenship, policies, procedures, and resources. Third, we will talk about the significance and value of becoming a U.S. citizen. We will discuss the rights and responsibilities of both citizens and non-citizens, as well as some of the limitations experienced by U.S. residents who lack citizenship. Fourth, we will overview the naturalization process. We will discuss eligibility requirements, as well as common mistakes people make that may prohibit them from pursuing the naturalization pathway to citizenship. And finally, in the 5th module, we will demonstrate how to navigate the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website to help you find reliable information to support students and families in avoiding immigration fraud. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that this presentation is part of an innovation grant funded by the Department of Homeland Security and U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. It was developed in partnership with the American Place Division of the Hartford Public Library. The views and conclusions contained in all instructional modules of the course are those of the authors and should not be interpreted as necessarily representing the official policies, either expressed or implied, of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Throughout this course, we encourage you to take notes, hit pause, read, review, and revisit information as needed. We have included a note-taking handout among the downloadable files of this course, which you may print and use to organize your thoughts for future reference as you complete each module. Please feel free to share this course and the associated resources with anyone who you know who could benefit from them. Each module contains invaluable resources for immigrant students and families in your school community and educators like you working to support them. So let's begin. This first module is going to overview terminology related to U.S. citizenship and immigrant statuses. At the end of this module, you will be able to define the difference between citizens and non-citizens, as well as types of immigrants and non-immigrants. When you think about all of the people who are in the United States right now, they are going to fall into one of 2 categories. They are either U.S. citizens or they are not U.S. citizens. People are made U.S. citizens by birth, by acquisition, or by naturalization. People who are born in any of the 50 states or in most U.S. territories are citizens of the United States by birth. Those born outside of the United States, whose parents are U.S. citizens, may become a U.S. citizen themselves by acquisition before the age of 18. People who do not meet the conditions for citizenship by birth or by acquisition can still become U.S. citizens by naturalization. In this course, we will be discussing in particular the naturalization route to U.S. citizenship, though it is good to keep in mind that one person's path to becoming a U.S. citizen can look very different from another person's path. There are 4 groups of non-U.S. citizens that you are especially likely to encounter in your role as an educator. We will discuss these 4 groups in detail in this course, though there are other types of non-U.S. citizen statuses to be aware of as well, some of which are listed on the next slide. First, let's talk about residents. The category of U.S. resident we will be discussing in the greatest detail in this course is that of lawful permanent resident or green card holder. It is critical for you to know that in order to be eligible for the naturalization process, a person must first be a lawful permanent resident or green card holder for 3 to 5 years. Whether the 3-year minimum or the 5-year minimum applies to the potential candidate for naturalization depends on the circumstances through which they were made a lawful permanent resident. If a green card holder is married to a U.S. citizen, they may be eligible to apply for citizenship after 3 years as a lawful permanent resident. Otherwise, the 5-year minimum likely applies. If someone is classified as a conditional permanent resident, it generally means that this person has immigrated to the United States on a marriage visa. They have received a conditional green card, granting them legal clearance to live and work in the United States, like any other green card holder. But if they wish to maintain these permissions, they are likely to be required to apply to update their status to lawful permanent resident before 2 years have elapsed. Non-immigrant visa holders are people who have temporary permission to be in the United States due to meeting certain specific conditions. Non-immigrant visa holders include students enrolled in U.S. programs, workers completing projects for U.S. employers, and travelers through the United States who do not intend to remain in the country on a permanent basis. These are other non-immigrant visa holders are given permission to be in the United States for a specific purpose and period of time. Refugees and asylees are people who are seeking protection. Refugees are people fleeing their home country due to persecution, whereas asylees are already in the United States at the time they request protection, but have a fear of returning to their home country for similar reasons. The last group we are going to discuss here are undocumented immigrants. Undocumented immigrants are people who live in the United States with no current legal immigration status. They may have entered the United States without permission, or they may have entered with temporary permission, but that permission has expired. An example might be a former non-immigrant visa holder, such as a person who had a work visa, but did not renew their visa in time, letting it expire despite remaining within the United States. The note at the bottom of this slide mentions that there are other non-U.S. citizen statuses not fully described above. If you would like to learn more about these and other types of non-citizen residents in the United States, please consult the Reliable Resources handout found among this course's downloadable files. The Reliable Resources handout includes links to materials that provide a more detailed listing and explanation of many statuses of non-U.S. citizens. We encourage you to read these materials and explore them as they become relevant to you and the students and families you work with. We are now going to talk more about what it means to be a lawful permanent resident or green card holder. As a critical reminder, the status of green card holder is what provides people with a pathway to U.S. citizenship through the naturalization process. There are several categories to which a person may belong in order to be eligible for a green card. The two most common eligibility categories are family-based and employment-based. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website, which will be reviewed in Module 5, provides detailed lists and descriptions of each of the eligibility categories listed above. The Reliable Resources handout also provides a direct link to a listing of green card eligibility categories if you would like to review them at this time. Green card holders have some of the same rights as U.S. citizens. For example, they can legally live and work in the United States. They are eligible for Social Security and Medicare benefits. And traveling in and out of the United States is easier for green card holders than it is for immigrants without a green card. Another very important right that comes with lawful permanent residence is the ability to petition for or sponsor close family members to live in the United States. This slide includes screenshots from the printable brochure on the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website, which overviews the 10 steps to naturalization. Here, we are just showing step 1 and step 2 to re-emphasize the importance of 1, understanding if you already are a U.S. citizen, and 2, understanding that a key eligibility requirement for naturalization is having been a permanent resident for at least 3 to 5 years. Now is a good time for you to hit pause and review resources on different types of immigration statuses and eligibility requirements. The resources shown here are hyperlinked on the Reliable Resources handout, which is a downloadable document found at the beginning of this course and embedded within each module. Please use these resources to build your own knowledge and share them with others. In the last module, we overviewed background knowledge about U.S. citizenship and different types of immigrant statuses. In this module, we will learn why it's important for educators to be knowledgeable about U.S. citizenship. Throughout this module, you will develop an understanding about U.S. citizenship policies and procedures so that you can be a better resource, advocate, and ally for students and families. While this course will build your foundational knowledge of U.S. citizenship, we want to emphasize that an educator's role is not to be an expert in immigration. On completion of this module, you will be able to explain how educators can be a resource for students and families attempting to find reliable information regarding citizenship, particularly information on the naturalization process. You will be able to distinguish foundational knowledge from specialized expertise while remaining an ally and advocate for students and families. You will also learn about educational resources that can help you support students preparing for the naturalization test, as well as be equipped to share these resources with students' families and other colleagues. Educators should be knowledgeable about U.S. citizenship for several reasons, but we will focus on the following interrelated concepts: exposure, trust, access, and expertise. School educators are often the very first person or point of contact for newly arrived students and their families when they come to the United States. This initial contact with students and subsequent frequent exposure once students are enrolled in schools allows immigrant youth and their families to develop trusting relationships with their teachers over time. Students often confide in educators about their immigration statuses or share vulnerable information about their families with the school. As such, educators serve the vital role of being a trusted resource of information with the ability to connect immigrant students and families with reliable immigration experts or community organizations. As a reminder, educators with foundational knowledge are not specialists in the immigration process, but they can provide advocacy and reliable resources for students and families. From an academic standpoint, educators are in a unique position to access materials and plan instruction to actively promote citizenship within their classrooms and within the school community. It is often through teachers that immigrant youth gain access to the civics and English language learning content they require to be prepared for the naturalization test. Research indicates that once immigrant youth separate from school settings, it's difficult to reconnect them with trusted resources that can pave the way to U.S. citizenship. Therefore, during the window in which educators who have built a trusting relationship with immigrant students have regular access to these students in the classroom, they are in the prime position to support immigrant youth and their families in the pursuit of U.S. citizenship. It is very important to know that educators cannot ask students or families about their immigration status. deny students access to school based on immigration status, or share personal information, such as immigration status, with others. The American Federation of Teachers produced a fact sheet in 2017 explaining the 1982 U.S. Supreme Court case, Plyler v. Doe, ruled that undocumented students have a constitutional right to receive a free public K-12 education. All students, regardless of their citizenship or residency status, are entitled to attend school. School districts that either prohibit or discourage students from enrolling in schools because they or their parents are undocumented immigrants may be in violation of federal law and the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Schools cannot bar a student from enrolling because the student lacks a birth certificate or social security number or has a record that indicates a foreign place of birth. Additionally, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, commonly known as FERPA, prohibits schools from sharing students' educational records, including records of immigration status, except in unusual circumstances or with written consent. However, because educators are a person of trust for students and families, immigrant youth might confide in an educator about their immigration status without being asked. If a student shares information about their immigration status with you unprompted, it's important that you provide them with resources they and their families can use on their own rather than attempt to serve as legal counsel. It's also important to keep in mind that you must never share the information you have been given with others without the student's consent. Educators can provide both instructional and social-emotional support to students and their families. In Module 4, we will review the naturalization process, which for citizenship applicants typically entails taking an English and civics test as part of the interview they must complete with a USCIS officer. To help applicants prepare for these experiences, educators can build students' foundational knowledge on key concepts of U.S. history and civics by discussing core concepts such as the Bill of Rights, the branches of U.S. government, and the importance of civic duty. For example, teachers of students considering applying for naturalization might structure lessons around fundamental rights and responsibilities of U.S. citizenship, like voting in federal elections. Educators can also provide explicit opportunities for students to develop written and oral English language proficiency to prepare students for the naturalization test and interview. It's also important for educators to ensure that students and their families are aware of the rights and benefits of everyone living in the United States, regardless of immigration status. For example, both citizens and non-citizens living in this country are promised freedom of worship and freedom of speech by the Constitution. When educators consciously choose to discuss these types of benefits within the classroom and school community, citizens and non-citizens alike are better equipped to act on their legal rights and to participate in local events. All students can feel that their culture is honored within the school setting, and a sense of connectedness among members of the larger school community is strengthened as everyone is made to feel recognized and included regardless of citizenship status. The USCIS website, which we will review in greater detail in Module 5, has a plethora of educator resources, such as study guides and practice tests, that can be used to prepare students for the naturalization test. The Reliable Resources handout also includes a section labeled Resources for Educators, where sample materials are hyperlinked. Building awareness and empathy for the challenges non-U.S. citizens face is crucial for educators. Immigrants without citizenship have limited legal protections, making them vulnerable and less likely to report being a victim of a crime or being treated unethically as a tenant or employee. They may be afraid to alert authorities of such treatment because of fluctuations in immigration enforcement policies or limited access to employment, which creates economic hardships. Language and cultural barriers can prevent immigrants from accessing resources like medical care and reliable immigration counsel. Non-citizens who have limited English proficiency and lack access to trusted resources can face significantly difficulty navigating visa, green card, and naturalization processes and forms. Educators should recognize the social and emotional struggles immigrant students and families face, which can impact their participation in school-sponsored activities and meetings, or can cause emotional distress in students. For example, non-citizens cannot travel as freely as citizens can, which sometimes results in social isolation and separation from family. Feelings of homesickness or isolation can have a significant impact on the well-being of immigrant youth. Despite the many benefits of U.S. citizenship, it's also important to be aware that personal concerns, such as the inability to hold dual citizenship in one's home country and in the U.S., might lead someone who is eligible for naturalization to decide against applying. Considerations of this type, as well as many of the vulnerabilities and challenges that impact immigrants of all backgrounds, are often not immediately apparent to U.S. citizens by birth. It is essential for educators to inform themselves on concerns that impact their community across immigration statuses in order to be an empathetic and effective supportive resource. While encouraging immigrant families to pursue U.S. citizenship when possible, educators should be aware that not everyone in their community may be eligible for naturalization, and that of those eligible, naturalization might not be ideal in every case. Immigrants' concerns and qualms about naturalization should not be dismissed offhand. Instead, educators are uniquely placed to offer a sympathetic ear and to point people with questions about U.S. citizenship towards official resources that can provide definitive answers. As mentioned earlier, in most cases, a non-citizen must be a lawful permanent resident for at least 5 years to apply for naturalization. In the case of some residents married to U.S. citizens, the period for which they must hold a green card before naturalizing is 3 years, a situation that is unlikely to apply to younger students, but which may be relevant to family members. While the overall process from being a green card holder to becoming a U.S. citizen can be lengthy, as shown here, an average of 7 years, once the application for naturalization is submitted, the processing time can be quite fast. It's important to encourage your students and members of their families who wish to obtain the benefits of U.S. citizenship to submit their applications as soon as they are eligible. Now is a good time for you to review educational resources on the USCIS website that you can use to prepare students for the naturalization test in English and civics. Educational materials designed for these purposes are available in many different formats, such as interactive practice tests, podcasts, and videos. There are also downloadable lesson plans, some of which are differentiated by English proficiency level. It's recommended that those who would like to get a more detailed sense of what to expect at the naturalization interview watch the USCIS's 4-part video series on the topic and use the contents of that video to practice at home. The top right corner of this slide has a screenshot of one of the test study materials developed by USCIS. You will see that it includes background knowledge about U.S. history, as well as opportunities to practice key English language skills. Practice with ordinal numbers, simple past tense forms, and dates, for example, is provided in a civics-specific context, giving students the chance to brush up on reading, writing, and U.S. history knowledge simultaneously. Integrating the study of U.S. civics and the English language whenever possible, as demonstrated in this example, is highly recommended when working with immigrant students and their families. We highly encourage you to explore the free learning resources prepared by the USCIS that bring together the study of civics and the study of the English language so that you can share these materials as relevant with colleagues and students' families. In Modules 1 and 2, we overviewed background knowledge on U.S. citizenship, including key terminology of different types of immigrant statuses. We also discussed why educators need to be aware of the conditions of U.S. citizenship and of naturalization specifically, and how educators can usefully include this knowledge in their instructional practice. In this module, we're going to discuss the significance, value, and benefits of becoming a U.S. citizen. Module 3 will outline the value and benefits of naturalization and explain some of the gains, financial and personal, that are associated with becoming a U.S. citizen. We will also review some of the rights and responsibilities of citizenship. It is important for educators to have this knowledge so they can integrate it into classroom learning. Immigrant children often serve as interpreters or cultural brokers for their families, so providing students with reliable information can tap into an established conduit system between school and home. Additionally, you will be able to directly share the significance, value, and benefits of U.S. citizenship with immigrant families, colleagues, and the community at large through your interactions outside of the classroom. First, I'm going to direct you to a video produced by the Carnegie Corporation of New York that emphasizes some of the benefits of U.S. citizenship. Please, after viewing, share this resource with others.
The United States has long stood as a beacon of democracy. Yet 8.8 million residents eligible to become U.S. citizens remain lawful permanent residents. Taking the next step to naturalization is simple and can increase financial security, reunite families, and open access to important rights and freedoms. Let's start with one of the biggest benefits: economic independence. A study of 21 major U.S. cities found that lawful permanent residents see an average 8.9% boost in individual earnings after naturalization. That comes out to about $3,200 more per person per year. Nationally, that adds up to a staggering $5.7 billion in income gains. Much of that wage growth stems from access to better, higher-skilled employment. Citizenship opens the doors to coveted scholarships. And many of the stable, good-paying jobs in the government and public sector can only be filled by U.S. citizens. All this translates into a higher employment rate for naturalized citizens and greater chance of home ownership. That's not just good news for individuals, but for the community as a whole. If the millions of eligible immigrants became citizens, tax revenues would go up by more than $2 billion. Gaining citizenship also brings families together. Lawful permanent residents can only sponsor spouses, minor children, or unmarried adult sons and daughters. U.S. citizens can bring parents, siblings, even married adult sons and daughters. And most children under the age of 18 who are lawful permanent residents automatically become U.S. citizens when their parents naturalize. Naturalization also gives you an important legal protection guaranteed to all citizens. You never have to worry about deportation from the United States. For the elderly and disabled who need critical care and assistance, crucial government benefits and programs may be out of reach unless they become U.S. citizens. And the freedom to travel shouldn't be overlooked. Naturalized citizens gain the right to receive a U.S. passport and can travel internationally without any limits on duration. Last but not least, at the heart of our democracy lies one of the most important freedoms given to Americans: the right to vote. U.S. citizens have a direct say in who represents them and what laws govern this country. They can even run for office, and if elected, determine public policy for their fellow Americans. From the federal government all the way down to the local school board, with your vote, you have a chance to impact vital, everyday decisions about everything from healthcare to education. A chance to improve life, not just for you and your family, but for the country and even the world.
The video you just watched highlights significant financial benefits of U.S. citizenship, including increased employment opportunities, access to scholarships, homeownership, and government assistance if needed. Additional benefits include legal protection from deportation, the freedom to travel with a U.S. passport, and increased opportunities to reunite with family or sponsor family members to begin their pathway towards U.S. citizenship. U.S. citizenship also provides people with a right to vote in federal elections, run for government office, and serve on a jury, which emphasizes the importance of civic duty and participating in the democratic process. It's crucial to note that U.S. law prohibits non-citizens from voting in federal elections. While municipalities in some states, like Maryland and Vermont, allow certain non-citizens to vote in local elections, the state of Connecticut does not allow non-citizens to vote in state or municipal elections. Misinformation regarding who is eligible to register to vote can jeopardize attempts to naturalize, since citizenship applicants are asked whether they have ever voted in this country when interviewed by the USCIS. Immigrants seeking information on voting registration eligibility should always be directed towards reliable, up-to-date government resources on the topic. Regardless of immigration status, there are some benefits of U.S. residency guaranteed to all people in America by the foundational documents of our government, most notably the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Rights afforded to everyone living in the USA include freedom of worship, freedom of speech, and freedom of expression, as well as the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In earlier modules, you learned background information about U.S. citizenship, including terminology of types of immigration statuses. You developed your awareness about U.S. citizenship policies and procedures and resources available to support students and families with preparing for the naturalization test. You also learned about the importance of becoming a U.S. citizen, including the values and benefits that go along with it. In this module, you're going to learn how to navigate the naturalization process. In this module, you'll develop a basic understanding of U.S. naturalization eligibility requirements and the naturalization process. You will also learn about some common mistakes made by candidates for naturalization. As a result of this learning, you should be able to identify the steps of the naturalization process, understand eligibility requirements, and provide students and families with a list of common errors to avoid. We encourage you, as always, to refer students and families to reliable resources about naturalization so they can get expert legal counsel on these matters. Here is an overview of the naturalization process. While the USCIS website describes the process in 10 detailed steps, we've condensed the process into 5 key points for you to consider as you gain an introductory understanding of the naturalization process. The first step is for an individual to check their eligibility for naturalization. We will cover this step in more detail on the next slide. The USCIS resources provide detailed guidance on both preparation and submission of the application for naturalization. Please refer applicants of your acquaintance to the most recently updated version of the USCIS's instructions on these steps available online to ensure that they are working from accurate and current information. After an application for naturalization has been submitted and cleared initial review, the applicant will be contacted and scheduled for a biometrics appointment. During the appointment, applicants will be fingerprinted and photographed for the purpose of background checks. Following a successful background check, a naturalization interview is scheduled at which the ability of most applicants to read, write, and speak in English is assessed. Most applicants are also required to pass a civics test, at which they verbally demonstrate a foundational knowledge of U.S. history, government, and geography. Having completed this interview, the applicant is notified of the decision of the USCIS officer with whom they spoke. Candidates granted approval move on to step number 5. Applicants whose interview is deemed unsuccessful, on the other hand, are not usually limited to one attempt. If an applicant fails to demonstrate to the satisfaction of the officer an ability to understand, speak, read, or write English, or if an applicant does not pass the civics portion of the interview, they may be scheduled for another attempt after a waiting period, during which they are expected to study in the areas deemed lacking. If this happens to someone you know, remember that there are many civics, reading, and writing study materials available on the USCIS website you can share with anyone requiring more practice in these areas. Once an applicant has successfully interviewed for naturalization, they are required to take the oath of allegiance. Occasionally, an applicant's moral or religious convictions may interfere with their ability to formally swear an oath or to agree to certain subsections of the oath of allegiance. In such cases, it may be possible for the applicant to take a modified version of the oath or decline to swear to a specific section. A written explanation of their rationale and other supporting documentation is generally required for such a request to be approved. Applicants who doubt they can take the oath of allegiance in its unmodified form should be advised to seek official legal counsel. This slide lists the general eligibility requirements for naturalization. Many of these requirements have been covered in other modules, such as being a lawful permanent resident for 3 to 5 years. Steps applicants must take to complete the naturalization process, such as completing an interview with the USCIS, were addressed on the previous slide. This slide recaps the requirements we have discussed and includes a few other considerations to take into account, such as the requirement that applicants demonstrate consistent physical presence in the U.S. during their time as green card holders. Feel free to pause the video here and familiarize yourself more thoroughly with this list of general eligibility requirements. Recall, however, that your role is not to present yourself as an expert on this topic to immigrants interested in naturalization. Instead, familiarizing yourself with this information should equip you to more efficiently point people toward the relevant parts of the USCIS.gov website, where they can determine for themselves whether they meet eligibility requirements and can take steps to seek out legal counsel as needed. There are several mistakes people commonly make before or while applying for naturalization. If you are aware of these mistakes, you can help your students avoid them. The top 4 bullets are actions people need to avoid, especially getting in trouble with the law. As the law varies from country to country and even from state to state, it is important for everyone in your community to have access to current and accurate information regarding rules and regulations they must follow as residents of this state. You're encouraged to discuss identifying reliable resources on national, state, and local laws with your students. Asking your students to regularly consult reliable resources of information on the law and consider how the law applies to them specifically can help immigrant families. In particular, avoid getting into situations that could complicate or endanger their eligibility for naturalization. The last 6 bullet points on this slide under the heading "Not" describe actions that immigrants in this country should take throughout their time in the United States, but frequently overlooked or neglect to do. An important point to consider, especially if you are working with students at the high school level, is that the government requires most young men in this country to register for the Selective Service. With few exceptions, U.S. residents assigned male at birth must register for the Selective Service on turning 18. Failing to register is a common oversight that can complicate applications for naturalization. Anyone wondering whether they might be exempt from this requirement should consult the list of selective service exemptions provided on the USCIS website. It is also common for immigrants eligible for naturalization to put off applying for citizenship far longer than necessary. In the case of some of your students, it may be useful to know that if parents naturalize as U.S. citizens before their non-citizen child turns 18, their child will in turn typically be eligible for citizenship by acquisition. Once an immigrant in the U.S. turns 18, this particular route to citizenship is no longer available. But students of yours who are 18 or older may be eligible for naturalization and should be encouraged to apply as soon as possible, even if they have no children of their own. The longer someone eligible to apply for naturalization waits to begin the process, the more complicated the application and associated documentation tends to become. Processing someone's personal history generally takes longer and requires more paperwork the older they get, as international travels, marriages, divorces, children, taxes, brushes with the law, and so on can accumulate over time. The earlier someone submits their application, the simpler the overall process is likely to be for that person. Educators play a crucial role in increasing students' awareness that the best time to apply for citizenship is as soon as someone is able. We encourage you to stress to your students and their families the importance of applying as soon as they are eligible to do so. As mentioned in previous modules, educators can help people prepare for the English language and civics knowledge portions of the naturalization interview, especially by providing access to instructional materials, and they can direct them to the USCIS website to determine whether the applicant is eligible for any fee waivers or other types of conditional support or exemptions. Seeking out reliable, current information and legal counsel is critical to avoiding mistakes and ensuring the naturalization process goes smoothly. This slide underscores the importance of encouraging eligible immigrants to apply for citizenship as soon as possible. You can see that the majority of citizens who naturalized in 2023 were between the ages of 30 and 44 years old, although many were eligible to apply earlier. We want to make sure that students and other eligible immigrants, such as some students' parents, submit their applications for naturalization as soon as possible so that they have full access to school or community resources available to them throughout the process, and so that they're able to complete the process with as few complications as possible. Now is a good time for you to review resources on the USCIS website relevant to the naturalization process. There are several resources available, and the Reliable Resources handout has been curated for you and is hyperlinked to bring you directly to those resources. We encourage you to share these with students, families, colleagues, and other community members who may find them useful. In previous modules, you've learned about U.S. citizenship, why educators should have background knowledge of U.S. citizenship, including its value and benefits, and we have reviewed the naturalization process. In this module, we are going to navigate the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website to help you find reliable information as you support immigrant youth and their families in avoiding immigration fraud. In navigating the USCIS website, through this module, you'll familiarize yourself with some of the available tools. You'll be able to tell the real USCIS website apart from imposters, and you'll have a more detailed understanding of the value of the website as a reliable resource for you and others. We hope that you'll share this resource with families, students, and colleagues for their own personal use, as well as integrate information and materials provided by the site into your own teaching whenever relevant. As a reminder, the Reliable Resources handout found among the course's downloadable files has been designed to assist you in providing support to immigrant students and families. Many parts of the uscis.gov website we will be discussing in this module are listed by topic in this handout. Note that each line of the handout is hyperlinked to the resource described. Please keep a digital copy of this document on your device so that you can click through to any given resource on the list whenever relevant. Now we are going to explore the uscis.gov website. This video provides an overview of how to navigate the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website. You'll find that this website has a plethora of helpful resources and supports not only for you as an educator, but also for people attempting to determine if they're eligible for U.S. citizenship through naturalization. As educators, you're probably very familiar with navigating different types of websites, but your students and families might need support in learning how to find the resources most appropriate for them. This overview will guide you on how to access some of the documents most likely to be of use to students and parents in your community. The first thing to notice about the home page is a drop-down to let the audience know that it is an authentic website. The address ends with .gov, and when you enter personal information on pages within the website, the lock will indicate that it is secure. Another feature to share with students and families is that there are multilingual resources available on uscis.gov. You can toggle between the Spanish language and the English language interface for the entire website by clicking on the word Español or English toward the upper right-hand corner of the site. While English and Spanish are the only two interface options, there are also many documents on uscis.gov available in other languages. After clicking on Multilingual Resources link, you'll be taken to a page where you can search for official USCIS materials by language or by topic, or you can enter keywords within the content bar. The ability to narrow your search by language is a really valuable feature for users with limited English proficiency, but those who have literacy in their home language. Now let's go to the top bar to navigate the website. You'll notice that these tabs remain fixed on the screen no matter where you go within the site. The down arrow indicates that they all expand to host additional resources related to that topic. As a reminder, most people need to be lawful permanent residents for at least 5 years before being eligible for the naturalization process. If someone does not yet have a green card, one might first start with eligibility categories under the Green Card tab to see if that person is eligible for a green card. I'm showing this as one example of different ways to navigate once you're within the website. Once I've clicked on Green Card eligibility categories, you'll see that there's a left-hand navigation and a right-hand navigation. Here on the right side, you'll see that the website stacks information, so you could either click on the arrow button to expand the content, or you can click on the entire bar to expand the content. Families with limited experience in using computers or with beginner-level English literacy, however, might need guidance in using these different types of navigational menus to know when something is hyperlinked with the blue text and underlined or not. In addition to having the information on the right side, you'll see that there's expandable content with links on the left-hand side. It's important that students and families know how to find the information that they're looking for and get support with navigating both the left-hand and right-hand tools. For example, here in the left-hand navigation, eligibility requirements requiring employment are categorized by preference and then followed by instructions. However, in the right-hand navigation, which I'll go back to using this back arrow, you'll see that Green Card through employment, once expanded, was categorized by category and then by preference. However, if you click on the example of immigrant worker, it does bring me back to that left-hand navigation bar. So you'll see that you can find the same information, but it is navigated differently. We're now going to return to the top navigation bar of the website. The guiding topic for this course is U.S. citizenship, and you'll see that once you click on the Citizenship tab, there's information for learners and educators as well as additional resources. First, I'm going to focus on you as educators. Here, you can review different types of resources that you can use to support students and families with preparing for the naturalization test. You can see that there is a study guide for the test, as well as additional resources for integrating English language proficiency instruction and U.S. history and civics knowledge into your classroom. You can also search by topic if you're looking for specific materials. I'm going to show you one example of instructional materials and how to navigate the different types of resources. This is an example of George Washington. Notice that the label beginning is referring to the proficiency level of English. You'll see that they provide a lesson plan. Over here, you can see how the plan is organized as far as learning objectives and what materials that you'll need. It also categorizes the different types of questions to prepare you for sections of the naturalization test. The lesson plan is the first PDF that you'll see, but you'll also notice that below it has handouts that are downloadable or printable, and you can scroll down on the left-hand side to see the types of resources available within that unit, or you can scan in this way. There's also an answer key provided for any of the materials that uscis.gov has curated. This website also allows people to take practice naturalization tests. You can find that under Naturalization Test and Study Resources. I highly recommend that you refer people to this 4-part video series that talks about the naturalization process, including the assessments and the interview. Other resources that are available can be found either these pre-labeled topics, where you might have people who want to learn more about their eligibility for naturalization or for applying for green cards. Under commonly asked questions, you'll see that there's information about finding legal advice and avoiding scams. Information such as this can also be found under topics. And when you're ever unsure of how to find information with the pre-labeled topics throughout the site, you can always search the site at this top search bar. One page I do want to bring you to is about finding legal services. So we'll start under topics and click on Find Legal Services. From this page, you can see that there's a list of recognized organizations. What's great about this page is that, like most of the uscis.gov website, the organizations can be found in different ways. With this link, you can see that the recognized organizations are sorted by state and city. You can either hover over the map and select your state, or you can scroll down to the alphabetized list to find the information. And here you'll notice that the document pops up with Connecticut at the top of the bar. I'm using the back button to return to the previous pages because the organization list has took us off from the uscis.gov website. You can use those back and forward arrows to navigate. Please do refer all people, whether it be colleagues, community members, students, families, whomever you're working with, to this website so that they all have reliable information that they need to be able to navigate pathways towards U.S. citizenship. Now that you have explored the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website, we hope that you will be able to use it in your own practice and share it with others. It is important for people to have access to reliable resources to support immigrant students and their families navigate the naturalization process, among many other resources that educators could use to improve their knowledge base on U.S. citizenship and help students prepare for the naturalization assessments. Following this video, you can self-check your understanding of the content covered in all 5 modules of this course. Please use the self-check to monitor your foundational knowledge and revisit any content that is worthy of your review. We hope that you have found the contents of this course meaningful and useful to you in your role as an educator. If you would like to get further involved in supporting immigrants and their families on the path to U.S. citizenship, you might consider volunteering as a citizenship ambassador. If you'd like to learn more about this volunteer opportunity, please contact the American Place Division of the Hartford Public Library. You can contact a representative of the American Place by calling the phone number given on this screen, or you can learn more by visiting their website at tap.hplct.org. Thank you so much for participating in the learning of this course. We want to remind everyone that this presentation is part of an innovation grant funded by the Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. It was developed in partnership with the American Place Division of the Hartford Public Library. The views and conclusions contained in this presentation and corresponding documents are those of the authors and should not be interpreted as necessarily representing the official policies, either expressed or implied, of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Please continue your work being an advocate, ally, and trusted resource for immigrant youth and their families by sharing this learning and resources with others.